This podcast is brought to you by Reynolds & Reynolds, the industry leader in automotive technology. Learn how Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can help you unlock your full potential by visiting rey.com/spark-AI. That's rey.com/spark-AI.
Hey, Jamie here in Detroit. On today's bonus episode of Daily Drive, our own Molly Boygan talks about the political environment surrounding tariffs and their far-reaching impacts on the auto industry. But first, Subaru Canada is shaking up its mix of imports from assembly plants in the U.S. and Japan amid tariffs. The company imported about a quarter of the vehicles it sold in Canada in 2024 from the United States, but it expects that tally to decline to 10% of sales for model year 2026. This week, Subaru Canada CEO Tomohiro Kubota spoke with Tim Demopoulos, publisher of our sibling publication, Automotive News Canada. Here's their conversation.
Your popular vehicles sold in Canada are imported from the United States. Some are imported from Japan. And now with the prospect of counter tariffs coming into the Canadian market, it does make for a lot of uncertainty for many brands, not just Subaru. But what is your sort of short-term plan to get through this?
Regarding the tariff situation, so far we have from our factories in Lafayette, Indiana, in the States, Outback, Ascent, and Crosstrek and Outback Wilderness model. So those four models are coming from US to Canada. So with the new generation Outback and Outback Wilderness Edition, for Canada, the production will go back to Japan and bringing cars from Japan. Our impact of total import from US proportionately would be around about 10%. With that, we can minimize the impact of the counter surtax. And regarding pricing change or model mix change, we are under discussion with national and regional dealer advisory board, how we can take the countermeasures. But again, the total impact is still under study, what kind of extra costs we have to observe. And we are trying to make for example, revision to raise the price and those things minimum as possible.
I want to talk a little bit about EVs. Subaru took a very cautious approach when it came to coming into the EV market. And now that market itself, there's some uncertainty around it. There's still, a lot of interest, but uncertainty around what the incentive outlook is going to look like and what market demand is going to look like. You have two new models coming, one all-new model coming very shortly into the marketplace, along with the new Solterra. Tell me a little bit about the flexibility of your plans to meet the changing market demands on the EV side, particularly in Canada.
Yes. As Osaki-san, as a new president at our manufacturer, Subaru Corporation, announced the management vision when he became a president in August 2023. And later on, he adds some extra information about the battery EVs. At first, including Solterra, 4 models will be globally ready by 2026. And in addition to that, SBR is planning another 4 complete new battery EVs on the Subaru's own development and production. Even though we share all the components and main chassis and those things with the Alliance battery EVs with Toyota, like Solterra, but the difference is with Trailseeker, Subaru take initiative for this development, and also for its production, we'll produce it in our own factory line in Gunma, Japan. So that makes a big difference. And also, we are watching always carefully the market itself, including our discussion with our dealer network. For example, the hybrid needs from the customer end. We do understand there are more demands shifting to hybrid. And starting this year, we will also have our e-Boxer hybrid first started with Forester. And at the initial stage, the proportion of the e-Boxer hybrid is still limited, but we are negotiating with manufacturer to enhance e-Boxer hybrid allocation to Canada. And then we are always seeking the best balance of all kinds of powertrains, the pure ICE, battery EVs, and also we'll have this e-Boxer hybrid. So on the product side, we can be a little more flexible than to completely shifting to battery EVs.
Coming up, our own Rudy Shork speaks with automotive news reporter Molly Boygan about her recent coverage of the politics surrounding tariffs and their effects on the industry. That's next on this bonus episode of Daily Drive.
As your business gets more complex, it feels like productivity can't go any higher. You need a way to move forward to a future where you don't have to start every interaction from scratch. You don't have to search for actionable information. You don't have to manually pull data to make decisions. You need a future where the complex is made simple and you can do more with less. How do you get there? It all starts with a spark. Unlock your full potential with the next generation of automotive dealership technology that actually does some of the heavy lifting for you by texting leads, transcribing calls, making data-backed recommendations, and boosting your overall productivity so that you can spend your time and energy on what truly matters, selling cars and growing your business. Spark AI, Reynolds' unified AI data layer, can empower your dealership to operate more efficiently and effectively than ever before, so you can do more, sell more, and make more. To learn how Spark AI can help your dealership reach its full potential, visit rayrey.com/spark-AI today. That's REYREY.com/spark-AI to learn more.
While much of the auto industry is warning that new tariffs could raise prices, strain supply chains, and cut sales, Senator Bernie Moreno says the opposite. He thinks tariffs will be, quote, fantastic. That's what he told a room full of auto leaders at the Automotive Forum in New York, just hours after economists and analysts shared much more cautious outlooks. We won't be talking about this next year at the auto show. We will be saying, we can't keep up with sales. This is fantastic. Moreno, a former dealer turned U.S. Senator, dismissed concerns that 25% auto tariffs would disrupt the industry. His comments stood in sharp contrast to data shared earlier in the day, including a J.D. Power projection warning that the tariffs would knock U.S. auto sales down by nearly 8% this year. When asked if these tariffs would be permanent, Moreno suggested something like a 10% tariff could stick around, as long as it's fair, and praised President Donald Trump's approach as tough but negotiable. He told automakers to stop resisting and start negotiating, saying, "There's an administration very open to making these kinds of deals." To break down what this moment means politically and for the industry, I spoke with Molly Boygan, the reporter who covered Moreno's remarks in New York. You covered Senator Moreno's remarks at the New York Auto Forum. Can you set the scene a bit for us? What was the mood in the room leading up to his comments?
It was a day of pretty pessimistic projections about the impact of the tariffs on the automotive industry. You had first a global economic outlook that projected less discretionary spending for households to purchase vehicles. You had a industry-specific outlook that projected in the tens of billions of dollars in losses from the tariffs. And, speaker after speaker just kept coming up and talking about the tariffs in different ways. And there were a lot of jokes about how everyone kind of couldn't wait for happy hour and, how stressful it's been. And then the last speaker before the happy hour was Senator Moreno, who came up with just a completely different attitude. I think he was really projecting a very positive and sort of optimistic vision of what the tariffs and other Trump policies would do for the industry. And it was definitely a departure from the earlier conversations in the day. The senator's in a very interesting position because he's a former auto dealer and he's a cheerleader of President Trump's administration and aligned with the president on a lot of his policy decisions. And so I think he was trying to just sort of project optimism and confidence about the tariff impact and, speak to an audience that historically has been fairly politically conservative and receptive to that type of messaging, but in this context was feeling a lot of fear and uncertainty about the impact of the tariffs on the industry.
He mentioned the idea of automakers making a deal with the administration in exchange for tariff relief. Has there been any talk from the White House or the auto industry about how that would actually work?
Especially at the Auto Forum, it was very unclear to me what he meant by this, because Congress is the branch of government that has the power of the purse. And he was sort of echoing some of the language that President Trump has used to describe himself as a political candidate and as the president, as a businessman, as a deal maker. And at the same time, there's more factors that go into how companies or even agencies are allocated federal funds. However, in the week following the auto show, there's been some reporting that's come out about how industry groups and lobbyists have approached the White House seeking exemption from the tariffs. And that's some of the reporting that's described how that list of exempted products and codes has come out. So in hindsight, I wonder if Senator Marino was talking about something like that, the automotive industry appealing to the administration to get carve-outs from some of the tariff impacts. However, he used the term runway, which to me describes a sort of financial package of some kind meant to sort of pad the impact or otherwise incentivize the nearshoring of automotive manufacturing. And on that, I'm really not totally sure what he meant.
You've been covering the policy side of this closely. How are automakers responding behind the scenes to the idea that these tariffs could become long-term or even permanent?
My sense is that there's a lot of confusion about what the goal of some of these tariffs are, because you have, on the one hand, rhetoric from the administration that suggests that the tariffs are meant as a bargaining chip to garner the U.S. the better end of a global trade deal. And that suggests that the tariffs are temporary because they would be responding to movement by other countries offering the U.S. an advantage. You then have the administration also talking about reshoring domestic automotive and parts manufacturing. And that implies that the tariffs would be permanent, because it's at that point that we would basically cut the nation off from a global automotive supply chain. That lack of clarity has been troubling to people in the industry. And most recently, that's illustrated to me by this letter that was published by NADA and by the Alliance for Automotive Innovation saying this is some of the projected economic impact of the auto parts tariff as we're sort of hurtling towards this May 3rd deadline. So these are, again, our two groups that have dealt closely with presidential administrations of all parties. And the fact that they went public with this letter as we approach this deadline is a clear indication to me of the increasing anxiety around the lack of clarity, stability, and instruction on those tariffs.
Whether the tariffs are a temporary negotiating tactic or a long-term policy shift, Senator Marino's comments show just how wide the gap is between political messaging and the economic concerns inside the industry. You can read Molly's full report at autonews.com, along with our latest coverage on tariffs, supply chains, and what's next for automotive.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of Daily Drive. We'll be back on Monday with a brand new full episode of the show.